Hi, everyone. I'm Shari Hubert, Associate Dean of Admissions here at Duke's Fuqua School of Business. I'm so excited to have you join us today. We're going to talk about an exciting new curricular offering here at Fuqua. And I wanted to let you know, for those of you who have not already applied but plan to apply in round two, by attending this session, you'll qualify for our application waiver as well. I'd now like to turn it over to our distinguished Senior Associate Dean, Russ Morgan.
Thanks, Shari. Thanks for joining us today. I'm Russ Morgan. I'm Senior Associate Dean for the full-time programs here at Fuqua. And part of my role is I get to work on our curriculum, think about the concentrations and the certificates we have. And the new MSTeM certificate falls in my purview. And so I'm excited to talk to you a little bit about the MSTeM certificate today. And then Shari and I would love to take questions around this or anything that you have as we finish up. And so the plan today, I'm gonna jump in kind of at a high level and talk a little bit about our overall curriculum. And so I want to give you just a little bit of guidance in terms of what the whole program looks like, and then we'll begin to get into the concentrations and certificates, and then really focus on what the MSTeM is. So let's jump right in. As I mentioned, I'm gonna start first with the overall Duke MBA experience to help you fully appreciate what does it mean to get a concentration or certificate here as part of your MBA. So at this stage, we recognize you're interested in an MBA and looking at the prospect of interrupting what I expect are already very successful careers in order to make this investment in yourself. One of the aspects of getting an MBA is that you're going to have an opportunity to build deep competence. But we hope that that experience is going to be far more than that for you. If you get the right match of the school with yourself and you commit yourself to it, it should be a transformational experience. So you should develop as a leader, and here at Fuqua, we're going to focus on your development as a collaborative leader, someone who can stretch, get the most out of themselves, and make the people around them and the teams that they work with better. So to set the environment that supports that development, where you're going to get breadth of exposure across disciplines, depth of competence within disciplines, and develop as a leader, we balance what is a really early structured experience, a core curriculum, with more significant flexibility and choice once you have that foundation. And so the slide has a lot on it, but wanted to use that to illustrate that you can see the dark blue area, really that summer experience for the Global Institute that we have, and then the first fall that you have. That's going to primarily be core classes. Those are going to be classes that we prescribe for you. So part of what we're going to be building out is the idea of what does it mean to be a collaborative leader, begin to establish what it takes to be effective in that, and also set kind of an interdisciplinary base. And so there's a base across all of our academic disciplines that we want you to have a foundation in. We want everyone to have this common foundation before we allow you to go and do the electives. So what you'll see, though, is that spring of your first year, fall of your second year, and spring of your second year are almost all electives. You have one remaining core class in the spring of your first year, the operations class. But outside of that, you have a lot of choice. And so what's reflected here is that choice. There's lots of opportunity that you have to develop co-curricularly, but curricularly, a lot of the decisions will be up to you. So I use that last slide to illustrate that in our curriculum, we're going to first build the foundation, then allow a lot of time to take electives. As you evaluate how you maximize the opportunity you have to take electives, we're going to provide significant guidance about how you can think about developing expertise or more focused competence in an area or in areas. Constructs we have here at Fuqua are very much like undergraduate majors, and we've organized them around what we call concentrations and certificates. And so the concentrations are, we have 14 of the concentrations, and they're 6 classes each, a little bit of breadth, a little bit of depth. And then we have 3 certificates that are going to require between 8 and 11 classes. And so the certificates are a little bit more robust in the sense of the classes that are included in that. When you come to Fuqua, you can graduate with just the MBA degree. You don't have to have any concentration or certificate, but we're going to allow you to choose up to 2 of these. And frequently students will make one choice around a concentration or certificate that captures what they want to do as they first leave Fuqua, their early career focus. And then they might have a longer term focus. And so something like leadership and ethics might be a longer term focus, but might have a product management focus when they first leave here. So MSTeM here is associated with a separate additional field of study. And so if you complete this, you're going to graduate with both a general management and the management science field of study. And so we're really excited about this. This is the first variant field of study that we have. And so you'll see in the slide that I have of the 17 concentrations and certificates, the top 16 are associated with just the general business administration and management. And then the MSTeM is associated with the management science field of study. And again, if you graduate with MSTeM, you'll get both those fields of study. With any of the other concentrations of certificates, you'll get our traditional MBA-associated business administration and general management. So the next 4 slides are going to get you into what the certificate looks like in the coursework. And one thing you should notice as I go through this is that there's breadth and depth. And so both were important to us and we feel are captured in our design. And the 3 elements as we were putting this together that we felt were critically important to capture are that the coursework in the certificate should be cross-disciplinary. Second, that it includes some coursework that's more focused on tools and underlying models, and I'll go through this just in a little bit. And third, that it also include coursework related to the application of these tools, so especially as they connect to management of technology, you'll see. So the result here is that we have a certificate that requires taking a minimum of 8 classes, with at least 5 of those being what we've labeled as these tools or more model-related courses, and at least 3 courses that are applications. So across these next 3 slides, you can see that we have 10 areas represented. 8 of those are our core academic areas, and then we have cross-functional areas. So you'll see a health area with 1 class, and then we have an interdisciplinary class that by definition crosses the different disciplines at Fuqua. And so part of the breadth here is that you'll also have to take at least 3 of these areas. And so we're looking at saying you can't just focus on one particular area represented here. All right, the next 3 pages list the coursework by the academic area of the course, and you'll see that some of the areas are going to be more heavily represented as tools, and some are going to be more heavily represented as applications. And these courses you can reference separately. So I'm not going to read through this in a lot of detail, but I thought it'd be useful just to kind of walk through, go through this relatively quickly, but give you an idea of what potential coursework could look like. And so you can see on this first slide, the areas represented are accounting, decision science, and finance. And so in accounting, well, what would be relevant in accounting? Well, the valuation class is going to be more tools related, whereas financial statement analysis is going to be more application oriented. The 3 decision science classes are going to be more tools. And so the nature of that area is going to be more tool and model based. And so we have a decision models class, forecasting, data analytics. And then within finance, a little bit of both again. And so you'll see a few tools courses, the derivatives, investments, and corporate finance class. And then in the applications area, a raising capital and financial technologies class. So here we have, I mentioned the interdisciplinary class. This class is an interesting class that it's focused on innovation and crypto venture, and it introduces our students to blockchain. And so we're fortunate enough to have an amazing faculty overall. We've got a faculty member here who has deep expertise and we were the first business school to have a blockchain-focused course, and that's represented here as one of the tools. We recently, last year, launched an application class in a specific industry, and that's our health analytics class. And so we'll be offering that again this year. And again, the idea of analytics as a tool, but also in application. How are we beginning to represent that? Management may seem less STEM related, but there are critical frameworks here for decision making that fit well in the certificate. And so you'll see the managing innovation and power and politics there. And then within managerial economics, the competitive analysis and applications of game theory.
So actually, Russ, there are 2 questions that just came in, and I thought they were kind of relevant to where you are right now and talking about it. The first one was around, are there any prerequisites from a quantitative perspective, such as coding, that you would need in order to apply for this certification?
So that's a fabulous question. And so what we found is that it does help to have programming background, particularly in R for the data analytics class. And so most of the classes don't require an aptitude in programming. But what we've done this year, based on feedback from the class 2 years ago, was prior to our data analytics class this year is we offered a boot camp. And so we had a 2-day, 8 hours on a Tuesday, 8 hours on a Wednesday before the term started, where we had a faculty member go through and teach in particular R and applications in R. And so, so we're looking at this. And so what programming would give us is the potential maybe for some of our classes to go an additional step. And so what we're trying to figure out is how important is that piece in some of these classes. And so in the finance area, Python is increasingly important. And I don't think necessarily that our graduates need to have deep expertise in programming, but what we're finding is that it might be helpful in illustrating and demonstrating some of the tools and applying some of the tools, that having the programming experience is very helpful.
Okay, great, thanks. And then the other one came in a little earlier, and it was around, what's the overlap between the health sector management certificate and MSTeM, and do students ever able to kind of do both?
You can do both, and we have had a few students do both. And so the trade-off is that we give you this abundance of electives, and I think that's a real selling point for Fuqua. How are you going to use those electives? And if you look at the MSTeM, it is going to require 8 classes. You're going to have about 15 classes of electives if you don't overload, and so you could take even more if you overload. And so there's not a lot of overlap in terms of the courses that you take for the health sector management certificate and the MSTeM certificate, but you can do both. There's a little bit of overlap. You can take advantage of that overlap, but you also have the ability to say, okay, I'm going to schedule my electives in a way that I can do both of these, and then you'll have maybe a little bit of residual capacity left to choose a few other electives outside of that.
Okay, great.
So,
Thanks.
Great. Awesome. All right, I'll just finish up the coursework here. And again, this is something that you can reference, so I don't want to belabor getting into too much detail here, but the marketing, operations, and strategy areas are obviously important. Within operations, a marketing of innovation class, very tools-oriented, and then a market research and strategy of tactics and pricing are included. Operations is principally included in management science typically, and we've got a supply chain management class and an operations strategy class here. And then rounding it out with strategy, you can see entrepreneurial strategy, emerging market strategy, and strategic modeling. So it's a fabulous set of courses, and part of the structure here is that students have a latitude to make some choices within the framework we've provided. So we've prescribed some of this, but if you reflect on what I just went through with you, you're going to choose 5 tools from 10 classes, 10 tools classes. You're going to choose 3 applications from 13 applications classes. And then the only other requirement is to choose these classes that include at least 3 subject areas across these 10, and so that you get some breadth. You don't have to make any decisions right now. You don't have to make any decisions about your concentration or certificate when you apply or even when you start here. So most students choose these in their second year, and as long as you meet the requirements, you can register with our registrars up until a few weeks before graduation for these. All right, I know that everyone in the session is not an international student, but there's some points specific to international students that I do want to make now. And the first is I would state is obvious, but it's worth directly stating because I think a few things build out of that. And that's that U.S. Homeland Security considers that international students are here to study, not to work. And so having said that, academic study does include practical training. And you're likely familiar with this at this point, but there are going to be 2 categories of practical training where getting your MBA, we've got a way to introduce work authorization for you. And so the first is curricular practical training, or CPT, and that's typically a summer internship. So you can take a summer internship just like a domestic student. You're going to get paid for the internship. The only requirement that we have is there's going to be some light coursework, a few things that you provide us just to reflect that it is connected to your academic studies. And the second is optional practical training, or OPT, and that's typically going to be used after you graduate. You could opt into using it before you graduate. For almost 100% of our students, they'll wait and use that after they graduate. And so the traditional MBA graduate OPT work training period is going to be 12 months. So where we start to circle back with MSTeM here is that under certain situations, in particular STEM-related fields and study of work, and work, the degree convey an extra 24 months of OPT for a total of 36 months of OPT. So the next couple slides, I just want to illustrate this and make sure that's clear. And so if you look at the different OPT scenarios for a minute, under the first scenario, which you can think of as a general OPT, you graduate with an MBA. You either have no concentrations or certificates, or you complete any of our concentrations or certificates other than the MSTeM. You find employment, hopefully your dream job, and as long as that job's related to your MBA studies, you're going to be entitled to 12 months of OPT. And if you're interested in staying in the US, you can apply for the H-1B visa during that time, and then potentially extend those work privileges. Under the second scenario with MSTeM, you graduate with our MBA, but you also take coursework to earn the MSTeM certificate. So this, as I said before, is a different field of study than the general business field of study. And you'll graduate with both, so it's sort of like having a double major. So any student who completes the field of study, MSTeM, associated with management science here, and finds employment that's directly related to the qualifying MBA MSTeM degree will qualify for the OPT extension for another 24 months. And as I said before, that's 36 months total. So from a practical standpoint, the 36-month OPT period is going to reduce uncertainty for the MSTeM graduate, given this longer period of time to connect it to the OPT and the additional chances in the H-1B lottery. So this is obviously going to be valued by our graduates, but I want you to also recognize that employers are on the other side of the market, and they're going to value the enhanced employment stability this provides. So with this, you can imagine they're going to have greater assurance of retaining the talent that they recruit. So our last slide here, before we get to questions, just summarizes what we see as some important trends that we've seen that connect to the MSTeM field of study. And these are going to be more overall for our MBA graduates, but I thought it was worth mentioning here, given that they align well with the tech area, the tech field, that's going to be supported by a lot of the coursework that we have in the MSTeM certificate. So what we've increasingly seen in our graduates is that they are getting and accepting opportunities in the tech sector. And so the sector has been trending up for several years for us, and I think for the industry overall. And last year, we had 28% of our MBA graduates take a job in the tech sector. Our top employer list, if you take a look at it, and some of this is on our website, and it includes a lot of the tech heavyweights. And so Amazon was our #1 employer last year. They hired the most Fuqua graduates last year. Microsoft was in the top 5. If you look at the list, Google, Dell, Cisco, Apple, Adobe are all well represented. And I went back and I looked at some of the roles that the class of 2018 MSTeM graduates accepted. And just looking through those, a few representative ones: supply chain manager at Johnson & Johnson and at Walmart, a technical product manager at Dell, a supply manager and a demand manager at Apple, technology solutions specialist at Microsoft, technical product manager at Amazon. So there's a lot of opportunity. A lot of that opportunity we're seeing connecting to MSTeM really is in the tech field. But we have a lot of people that go into consulting. And although consulting is not necessarily going to be connected to MSTeM, there are a number of analytic and tech-based roles that connect there. So we see it really working well in terms of what it does, going from Fuqua and our academic curriculum to career success. All right, we'll wrap up the presentation here. We hope the discussion has helped you better understand the positioning of MSTeM and the curriculum, the potential courses that you might take. And at this point, we'll go into whatever questions they have, Shari.
Absolutely, and you've actually answered a lot of the questions that have come in through your presentation, but one in particular was, what's the cost of the course? Is there a separate cost than just the normal daytime MBA?
So once you come in here for the MBA, there's no additional cost for anything. And so the nice thing about that is any choice of concentrations, any choice of any of the certificates, you do those, you pay one fee for the MBA. As I mentioned before, maybe this person that wanted to do HSM, the health sector management, and MSTeM wants to take an overload at some point. We don't charge by the course. We charge one fee for the MBA. So you can take overloads, you can add up in one term, cut back in another term. You've got a lot of flexibility.
Perfect. There's another question about, do I apply separately? No, you apply to our daytime MBA program. And as Russ had mentioned, then as you're in the program, probably your second year, you'll start to think about, do you want to also then register for this MSTeM certificate? So there's no separate application on the front end.
Right, and that might be the most confusing thing about this, is that certificate means something different depending on what school you may have gone to or what you're doing. And so here, certificate is like a deep major for us. And so it's the language that we use, but you can think of it as a field of study. And it really is just the idea, if you're familiar from an undergraduate institution, of a major. It really is like a major.
Mm-hmm. But you still get your MBA, right?
Exactly.
Another question that was interesting was you had talked a little bit about the career support and the types of STEM jobs, which is great. Can you share a little bit about the rationale for why MSTEM? And it's interesting, this individual asked why MSTEM relative to, say, business analytics or private equity certificate. Business analytics is essentially what this is, but, can you just talk about, why did the school decide to pursue this certificate?
Yeah, I think the alignment with our MBA is really the starting point for this and why we would do this versus something in business analytics. And so we actually have a one-year program, Master of Quantitative Management, that really is focused more on analytics, and you get less depth and breadth in terms of general management. And so what we wanted to have here are really well-prepared leaders who also can overlay on top of that some expertise in analytics and in technology management. And so you can imagine we're holding you accountable essentially to all the things from our core curriculum and the breadth that we expect of our MBA graduates. We are gonna ask you and push you to develop as a leader. And so this idea of collaborative leadership is embedded in this. And so what are our strengths? We're trying to leverage our strengths and then overlay on them this faculty expertise we have that also supports the analytics and technology management.
Okay, great. Excellent. Let's see. I haven't chosen certificate in my application form, so could we choose it again after admission? Yep, we talked about that. Mm-hmm. Talk a little bit more maybe about the career support that one can expect to get as it relates to this.
Yeah, there's great career support here. And so we've got a terrific career management center. And with that, each of our sectors has a sector director and a staff that works in terms of, you can think of our organization as they're going to be a lot of people who will separately support your development. They'll help you prepare more generally. Think about how do you represent yourself in terms of your resume and cover letters and networking and those things. And then from there, we have expertise within each of these sectors. And so the tech sector would have a staff that's going to be well-versed in understanding the employers in there, what it takes to prepare, what the timing looks like, a roadmap for that. You can imagine you can go from there to marketing or maybe to finance and to the other areas. And so what we've tried to do is make sure that whatever interests you have, we're going to have you covered. And something more tech related is something that we certainly think is important. The stats I went through, again, from a percentage basis and from a trend, tech is increasingly important. And so we are increasingly trying to track that and put resources toward that.
Great, thank you. Let's see if any other new questions have come in. Is there a separate scholarship consideration if one chooses to pursue MSTEM? For all of our individuals who apply, you are automatically considered for merit-based scholarships. So there wouldn't be a separate MSTEM scholarship, but you would be considered for merit-based scholarship as long as you apply to the MBA program. So that's an automatic kind of, you don't have to apply separately for scholarship consideration. And I think that's it right now, unless other questions come in. We have a little bit more time, so if you have any last-minute questions, feel free to ask. And they can be on the MSTEM certificate, they can be on the admissions process in general, or career support, anything. If not, then we'll kind of wrap it up.
Can they be on weather in Durham?
Yeah, you can talk about weather.
It's fabulous. Fall weather here right now. It's
Halloween
terrific.
Will be 73 degrees tomorrow, so we're very excited about that. Alrighty, so I think that wraps up our questions. I just want to thank you, Russ, really for taking time to explain the newest of our curricular offerings. I want to thank all of you out there. I know it's morning for some people, night for others, and for joining us. Wanted to remind you again, for attending this session, you will receive a application fee waiver if you choose to apply in the rounds 2 or 3. I also wanted to put in a plug. We're going to be traveling around the world with our Dean, Bill Bolding, and myself. We're traveling to Singapore, Hong Kong, London, and Dubai coming up over the next couple of months. And so if you're in any of those particular cities around the world, as well as Miami, or can travel to those cities, please join us as we talk about kind of the impact of Duke doing business better and the value of some of the curricular offerings that we just discussed today. Alrighty, thanks so much, Russ.
Thanks so much, everybody.